Well, hello everybody. Welcome to our Smrt live stream. My name is Joshua Porter. I'm a teacher here in Spokane, Washington at SCEL. And I'm excited to be here for the first live stream. This is incredible. This is great. I get to talk to people all over the world from this little studio here in the US of A. So I've been a teacher for 6 years. I taught in several countries. I taught in Haiti and in Central America, and I love teaching here in the United States because I get to experience all the Oh yeah, I know. Shoot, I'm trying to take care of that.
Okay.
The stream stopped though.
Did you tell Julian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm guessing restart the computer. Wait, can you use the internet?
Wait a minute. That's just the music.
I know. I put it back on. I can use the internet.
Is the entire stream stopped?
Yeah, hold on. Let me try to go back live again. Okay.
It's still streaming. It's up.
So the music is going.
Can you hit green?
Okay, I'll try. Hi. So we're back. Sorry about that technical difficulty there. Check this. Okay, so the chat's going again. Hi, Anita. Hi there. And we are, as I said, streaming from Spokane, Washington. We're working out some Wi-Fi difficulties right now, but we'll get everything up and working. And this is exactly why we're doing this, to kind of get to know you and practice a bit in this brand new studio in wonderful Spokane, Washington. We're here at Spokane College of English Language, and we have this beautiful building with these amazing students that I get to see and teach every day. So I'm happy to be able to connect with you guys from so far away. Let me take a look here at the chat, and yeah, everything is going well. Once again, my name is Joshua, and this class is English for Academic Purposes, EAP. Nice little acronym there. And the idea is that we have so many different varieties of English and in different fields, different jobs. For example, I built a class that will be taught later today, which is English 125 for Health Sciences. And if you think you want to go work in the medical field, maybe you want to be a doctor or a nurse or a phlebotomist, which is a person that draws blood, you need to know specific words, specific terminology. Also with regular grammar and mechanics and syntax. It's the way we make our sentences. This class is an upper level class, so I'm going to speak at a pretty natural pace. I will try to enunciate my words so you can hear them clearly. But if I ever speak too quickly, feel free to ask a question in the chat, and we will get back to you, and I can repeat things and give you all the information that you need. So you'll see me sometimes looking over here when I'm checking the chat so I can see all your questions and hopefully answer them if I know them. I know a lot of English, but it's hard to ever know all of English. We're always learning. All of your teachers are always learning. If they stop learning, they should probably stop teaching, because it's a lifelong process. So this is great. We have lots of people here tuning in. I'm going to start the lesson now. We had a little technical difficulty that delayed, so I'm glad you guys stuck around and are here with us. I'm going to bring up our lesson here and close out of Google. What I'd like to go over today is 4 types of sentences. So this is breaking down the main 4 types of sentences in English that we use. There's a simple sentence which could be just subject and verb, such as I play, I teach, I work, or you play, you teach, you work. Subject verb can be the simplest English sentence possible. And that's the easy one. That's the one we learn first. But this is an upper level class. So we need to practice using all kinds of sentences. So the second type of sentence is a compound sentence. Compound sentences use conjunctions that you may know by the acronym FANBOYS. Many people use the acronym FANBOYS to remember all of the conjunctions that you can use. F is for. You can put for between two independent clauses. So if I wanted to say something like, I play and I teach, I can say that because I play is a independent clause. It's a complete good English sentence. It's very simple, but it's good. I teach is also an independent clause. It's a good English sentence. If I want to combine those to show relationship or just efficiency, like I want to say more information in an easier way, I can say I play and I teach. An example of this would be if I played piano, but I also want someone to know that I teach piano as well. I play piano and I teach piano. And the words that connect those, like the word and I use that as an example because it is so common. It's the most common conjunction, I would say, in the English language. That is, you're going to see it more than any other conjunction, but there are others. There's for, there is and, which we talked about. There's nor, which nor is not that common. It's sort of antiquated English, old English. You might see it, but more than likely you would see it in a formal setting. An example might be, at this company, we do not sell paper, nor do we sell pens. It just sounds very formal, and I personally don't use it, so I like to let students know that. When we learn English, English is always changing and evolving and growing, and we want to make sure we're using current English, the newest cutting-edge English. That's what we're all about here. That's why we create this great curricula and teach these classes, to teach you the English you'll actually use all over the world. So we have for and nor, but, which shows contrast. When I use the conjunction but, I'm trying to show contrast. For example, I don't eat fast food, but I eat fast food when I travel. And I would actually, for this sentence, probably say I don't usually eat fast food, but I eat fast food when I travel because it's simple, it's quick, it's easy, but very unhealthy for me, so I try not to eat it. Many of my students, when they first meet me, if they have never experienced an American teacher, they'll say, Joshua, why do you not eat McDonald's every day? And I have to explain that we don't always eat McDonald's. It's not good for you. It's not healthy. So but shows contrast. I don't usually eat fast food, but I eat fast food when I travel. So I sometimes eat fast food. So moving on with fanboys, we have for, and, nor, but, or is another very popular one, or. On the weekends, I play baseball or I play guitar. It shows two options, binary options. So that's another common one. And, but, and or are probably the three most common conjunctions in English. And the next one is also a little unusual, yet. Yet is the next one. Oops, typo there, not yes, yet. Yet is not as common. I would say that's more common than nor, but still not often used. And it's also a way to show contrast. It was raining outside, yet I still went for a walk. That could be an example. And then our last one is so. And so is a good conjunction, also very popular. So is used to explain, to show purpose or reason. I was tired, so I took a nap. It shows the reason I took a nap was because I was tired. So those are, fanboys, the mnemonic or acronym for remembering our conjunctions. So when we take two simple sentences and we use a conjunction, they become compound sentences. So moving back a little bit, example simple sentences, we have Winston works in the HR department. Winston works in the HR department. And Omar there, I see you want to say although too. We're going to get to although. Be patient, we'll get there. I'll tell you all about although. So again, simple sentences. Winston, which is usually a man's name in America. Winston works in the HR department. That is a simple sentence. We have Winston, which is our subject, works, which is our verb, and then we have a prepositional phrase, works in the HR department, which tells us more about Winston's job. Human resources, which HR here stands for human resources. Human resources is an important branch of every company. This again is a simple sentence. It's one independent clause. And we can add things to these simple sentences like adjectives or prepositional phrases to give more meaning, to give more understanding to our subjects or our verbs or our objects. But they are still simple sentences. Motivating, to the next example, motivating employees requires a combination of factors. Motivating employees requires a combination of factors. This again is one more simple sentence, which we can add information to, but if we break it down, you can think of a simple sentence as just a subject and a verb, and then maybe some modifiers like adjectives or adverbs. So simple sentences can have compound subjects. So I want to talk about this word here, compound. Compound is when we put two things together. When we want to create something new out of two separate things, we can put them together. So a compound subject, we can use a conjunction to talk about two nouns and an action that they both do. For example, Winston and Sophie work in the HR department. So my compound subject here is Winston and Sophie. This tells us that both of these subjects work in the HR department. And this is still an example of a simple sentence. Let me see here. Simple sentences can contain two or more main verbs, as long as they refer to the same subject. So if I use two verbs in a simple sentence, they both refer to the same subject. As an example, Winston works in the HR department and consults marketing. So my subject is Winston, and my verbs are work and consult. And you notice we still use that conjunction and, that common conjunction in English, where we want to say there are two verbs. We can use the conjunction and. So Winston works in the HR department and consults in marketing. So Winston has two jobs. He works in the HR department and he consults in marketing. And that is still a simple sentence. So compound sentences. Compound sentences are when we take those two, as I said, and we use one of those conjunctions from fanboys, for, and, but, or, etc. And we're able to take both of those simple sentences and combine them without any extra capitalization, just one period. It's one sentence, but we've combined two simple sentences with a conjunction. Compound sentences have two complete thoughts, different ideas that we want to combine in the form of two independent clauses. So when I say independent clause, you can think of an independent clause as a simple sentence. Really, it means the same thing. It is something that you can say on its own, by itself, and it has meaning. It makes sense to the listener. We use a joining word here. Sorry, I've lost my thought there for a second. It's joined by a conjunction or with punctuation. We can use commas after or before our conjunctions. So there are three ways to form compound sentences. We're going to break them down and show you those three ways we can do that. First, we can use a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And that's what I was talking about, the fanboys right here. So we have our first independent clause or simple sentence, and then we have our coordinating conjunctions here, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And they have the purpose here. So for is to introduce causation. If someone asks why we did something. I bought a guitar, comma, for the purpose of learning to play guitar. So it tells you the causation for the first independent clause. If I use and, it's to add addition. It's to say both of these things are true. I like pizza and I like ice cream. Nor, as I said, is not very common, but does show negative option. So I can say something like, I do not eat McDonald's, nor do I suggest anyone eat McDonald's. I'm showing two things that are negative options. I don't. You notice I use the negative there. I don't eat at this restaurant, nor do I eat at that other restaurant. And but is for opposition, shows contrast, something that is different. I hike in the woods, and I hike through the city. That would show similarity. If I use but, I hike in the woods, but I do not hike in the city. It's to show disparate nature, contrast, something that is different. We zoomed in a bit here. I hope you can see the screen a little bit better. We have or, which is an option. Would you like coffee, or would you like tea? Oftentimes, one person will prefer one or the other. And it's a binary option. It's two different things, coffee or tea, this or that. Two different things that are options for us. And yet is a surprising opposition. It's something that would make you go, oh, that's interesting. For example, I don't have a lot of money, yet I drive a Ferrari. That would surprise you. That would be something you would not expect. If I do not have a lot of money, why do I have a Ferrari? So it shows a surprising opposition. And then so is to introduce effect. It's like answering the question why. I bought a guitar so I could learn to play guitar. It explains why the first independent clause over here is the case, is true. So here are examples. Again, we're going back to Winston, our friend Winston here. Winston enjoys working for HR, but he prefers working in marketing. He enjoys working in HR, but he prefers working in marketing. That shows that contrast. Sophie felt ill yesterday, so she called in sick. Remember, so is to introduce that effect. Like why did she call in sick? The answer is that first independent clause. She felt ill, so she called in sick. It's like answering why. I'm checking here, and we have lots of viewers, and feel free to ask questions. We love to answer questions. That's the purpose of this live class. We get to interact with you. We get to answer any questions you have about the material as we go along. So feel free to ask me any questions you have. Another way to, again, we are looking at compound sentences and the three different ways to make them. A second way is a semicolon. Now, a lot of students are confused with the semicolon. It looks strange. It's not a colon. It's just a period stacked on top of a comma. And American students in high school use this incorrectly all the time. I did when I was in high school. And it took a little while to learn it, but it's actually very easy. When we use two independent clauses, so remember, an independent clause is just like a simple sentence. I work, I play. And they're clearly logically related to one another by addition or causation. They can be connected by a semicolon. For example, Sophie felt ill yesterday. She called in sick. She called in sick. Now you notice the difference between the first way to make compound sentences, where we use fanboys, for, and, but, nor, etc. Here, we do not use the coordinating conjunction. We do not need it. The semicolon does the job of the comma and the coordinating conjunction. So it's a little cleaner. We don't have to add that extra word. You can type faster if you master the semicolon. And it's a fun punctuation mark to use. Let me see here. Beatrice. Okay, Beatrice, can you give another example for yet? Yes, I'd love to. I'm going to go back to the document here. So let's talk about for. Remember here we saw for introduces causation. Causation. So what is the cause? For example, why won't my car start? I did not put gasoline in it. That would be the causation of my car not starting. So causation, something that causes something else. An example of for, we could say, I bought a guitar for, for I want to learn to play guitar. So it explains that causation. I bought a guitar. Why did you buy a guitar, Joshua? I bought a guitar for I want to play guitar. And this sentence, it does sound a little formal when I say it out loud, but it does connect those two ideas through causation. With yet, if we look at our lesson here, yet is a surprising opposition. Surprising. It's something that we did not expect. And my example earlier, if you've just tuned in, is I said, I do not have a lot of money, yet I drive a Ferrari. I do not have a lot of money, yet I drive a Ferrari. And I'm sure you guys know or have heard of a Ferrari before. World famous car out of Italy, very fast race car. It would be very strange, you would be surprised if you knew I did not have a lot of money and I drove a Ferrari. It'd be nice, it's not true, but if I told you that, you would be very surprised. So that's an example of yet, and I believe I've misspelled Ferrari there, apologies. You notice here we use, again, that comma and the coordinating conjunction yet. Also here, comma and the coordinating conjunction for. So that is the first way to make compound sentences. And the second way, oh, Rosa, you have a good question as well. Can we use so to show reason? So if we go back to our lesson here, so is introducing effect. We can think of effect as like a result. What happens in the end? If I go outside in a cold country in the winter with no coat, the effect would be I would become cold. So if I wanted to create a sentence with that meaning, I would say something like, I left without my coat, so I became very cold. And again, I'm typing quickly there, became. I left without my coat, so I became very cold. So Rosa, it's the reason I became very cold is I left without my coat. So in one way we could think about it, the first independent clause is the reason for this result. It's just important to remember the order of those. The result there is actually the first independent clause. If someone asked me, why are you so cold? I would say, because I left without my coat. So yes, we can think of so that way. Anita, and yet is the same as anyway. That is a great question. Anita's question is yet the same as anyway? So let's look at a couple of sentences and decide. We'll decide if yet is the same as anyway. I don't eat seafood, yet I love the smell of sushi. Okay, I don't eat seafood, yet I love the smell of sushi. When I go in a sushi restaurant, I love the smell. And this is a surprising contrast. When we use yet, Anita, it's a surprise to us. We don't expect it. Someone who does not eat seafood, it's a little surprising that they would love the smell of sushi, but maybe they have an allergy and they simply can't. They wish they could eat sushi, but they can't. But there's a little bit of a surprise there. So we choose to use the coordinating conjunction yet. If we tried to make the same sentence using the word anyway, I don't eat seafood, comma, anyway, I love the smell of sushi. It's very unrelated. It would not have the exact same meaning. Anyway is a word that we use often in English to mean, here is extra information. We'll even use it to end conversations sometimes. We'll say, anyway, I've got to be going. It's unrelated to whatever was being written or talked about before. So they're not the same. We would not use those exactly the same. But great question. Let's see here. Saud, or Ben, should I call you Ben? Looks like. Your question is where do we put the comma before or after the preposition? Prepositions, that's a great topic. And we're not really going to go into prepositions right now because I want to stick to coordinating conjunctions. But we will have preposition lessons coming up, and that's a fun topic. I have some great presentations on prepositions. There are probably 200 or 300 prepositions in the English language. We have some that we use very often, but that's another great lesson. So come back again, and we will talk about prepositions. Good question, though, and thank you for that. So I'm going to keep moving forward with the lesson here. We're still on the second kind of sentence. We talked about simple sentences, which are independent clauses. Now we are talking about compound sentences, which are two independent clauses that we connect. We put them together in a couple different ways. One is with coordinating conjunctions. The other is with a semicolon. And I love the semicolon. I think it's a great punctuation mark. We do not have to use a coordinating conjunction. So another example that we can see this in is employee motivation is a complicated job for managers, semicolon. There are many different approaches to motivating staff members. Now this is just two independent clauses that we separate, and you notice after the semicolon, we do not capitalize the next letter. If I were to write these two sentences independently, if I did not want to show relationship, and I just wanted to say two different sentences, I could simply put a period here and capitalize this letter. And this is still good English. This is correct grammar, correct syntax, and correct mechanics. With a period, the next letter will always be capital after a space there. But I want to show relationship. I want to show that we want to connect these. These two independent clauses are so related that I want to show that to my reader. So to do that, to say these two ideas are closely related, I use a semicolon and no capital letter. And that's how we use semicolons. Feel free to ask more questions too. I see we have a lot of people in the chat there. And Beatrice, that was a great question. And Rosa, also, great question. Thanks for that. And Ben, if you tune in again, we'll talk about those prepositions. Anita, thank you too. The third way that I want to talk about combining two independent clauses is using a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. So they can be connected by a semicolon and one of many adverbs. We have many, many adverbs in English, but some are more common, and we're going to look at those today. And they introduce logical relationship of ideas. The whole purpose of a compound sentence is to show there's some sort of relationship there. Would you like coffee or tea? Those are both drinks that are offered if you visited my house. I would offer you coffee or tea. So it's to show relationship, and we do that either with a comma and coordinating conjunction, a semicolon, and a second independent clause, or we use an independent clause, or excuse me, a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. So we have also. Also is one of those words that we'll use. Furthermore has similar meaning. It's saying I'm going to add information to this. Moreover, these are all good academic words too that we can use in essays or formal writing, academic writing. And you will also hear them in speech. You will hear Americans or Canadians or Australians use them in speech. We have opposition. So these words are for addition. Also, I'm adding information. Furthermore, I want to add information to the idea, but it is related, it's connected. Or moreover, they have similar meaning of addition. If I want to show opposition, much like or yet, surprising opposition with our coordinating conjunctions, I can say however. However is opposition. So an example could be, I do not eat fast food often. However, if I travel, I might. That would say an opposite idea, saying I do not eat fast food. However, I might if I were traveling. On the other hand, this is a great idiomatic phrase. This is something we say in English often. It shows opposition. I can say, we could see a movie later. On the other hand, we could play soccer. In America, we say soccer. Most of you probably would call it football. But it's to show another option, a second option, on the other hand. And we can think of it this way, like one option, on the other hand, this option. And nevertheless also shows opposition. An example might be, it is raining outside, nevertheless, I will go for a walk. I do not mind walking in the rain. Most people probably would not, but I'm showing opposition. I will choose to do that. Let's see. I'm going to try to pronounce your name, and if I get it wrong, I'm sorry. You can tell me how to pronounce it. But it looks like Ingelizis. I hope I'm doing that right. Your question is, why do you put a comma before or after the preposition? Do you mean conjunction? So we did talk about conjunctions earlier. Right now we're talking about conjunctive adverbs, not prepositions, adverbs. And earlier we did talk about coordinating conjunctions, fanboys, for, and, but, nor, so. So we do put the comma before the coordinating conjunction. We put a semicolon before the conjunctive adverb. And again, we'll talk about prepositions at a later time. So tune back in, and we will have a whole hour on prepositions. It's a very fun lesson to teach, and I love teaching it. So tune back in, and we'll check that out. Let's see here. Caesar, is the semicolon common to use? My teacher said to me that it is not good for writing an essay. I will say that a semicolon can be thought of in a similar way to an exclamation mark, this punctuation that we do not use so often. I tell my students not to use exclamation marks in essays also. I would use a semicolon in an essay though. I do use semicolons in essays. But we want to be careful how we use it. If we put exclamation marks at the end of all of our sentences, it sounds like we're shouting because that shows we're exclaiming something. We're using it to show emphasis. We're being emphatic. So if I were to change this sentence here, the second independent clause, it makes it more powerful. I don't eat seafood, yet I love the smell of sushi. I love it. It's great. I have to shout that almost because it shows excitement, energy. So my advice would be you can use semicolons in essays, but choose to use them only when you want to show that close relationship, that something you want to show your reader that something is connected in an important way. That is why we combine sentences. So great question, Cesar. That's excellent and good point. Ultimately, you will find your own writing style, but it's important to take advice from many different places and find out what works best for you. Rosa has another question here. We can use, on the other hand, at the beginning of a paragraph, like in an argumentative essay. That is a great question. I would not use, on the other hand, at the beginning of a paragraph. The reason I would not use that is, on the other hand, it's an idiomatic phrase, and we use it as a conjunctive adverb to connect an earlier thought. You'll notice here on the lesson that there's a semicolon. So the independent clause, the first independent clause is before the semicolon. And then we use, on the other hand, and a comma to connect a thought to the first independent clause. I'll give you an example sentence. With on the other hand, I might say something like, I want to travel to Canada. On the other hand, notice I use semicolon and a space there. On the other hand, and a comma. We put a comma after our idiomatic phrase there, on the other hand. I might travel to the United States. So it's two options. It's showing this, this binary option that is different. It shows opposition, something that's another choice, like coffee or tea. I might travel to Canada. On the other hand, I might travel to the United States. So good question, Rosa, thank you. So to reiterate, Rosa asked if we could use that at the beginning of a paragraph, and the answer would be no. This connects a second independent clause to the first idea, the first independent clause, and it shows that relationship. Good question. Beatrice, you said, is it good to use semicolons instead of commas? It depends on the situation. So earlier, we used comma for combining two independent clauses into a compound sentence. We use a comma before the coordinating conjunction, and, or, but, these words here. With a semicolon, if they are simply two independent clauses, we will only use the semicolon and no comma and no coordinating conjunction. Sometimes we will use both, like the example of a semicolon plus a conjunctive adverb. We will first give an independent clause. So this clause here matches up with my example sentence here. This is the first independent clause. I want to travel to Canada. So I want to travel to Canada is right there. And then I have a semicolon and the idiomatic phrase on the other hand. So semicolon phrase. Then I do use a comma. I use a comma to separate this conjunctive adverb, separate it from my independent clause here to introduce that second idea. And again, this is just to connect those thoughts, to put those thoughts together. So great question. Thank you for that. And Cesar, you said, is it suitable to use a semicolon to list things. Yes, sometimes we do use semicolons to list things. For example, in America, we have 50 states. And I have not been to all of them, but I would love to travel to many states here in America. We're in Washington State here at Spokane College of English Language. But when we want to type several different states, let's say I wanted to make a list. I have traveled to, and now I'm going to list all the states I've traveled to, but I want to add cities. And when we talk about city and state, we do need commas. So I want to travel to Spokane, Washington. Now, the problem is, usually with a list of items, we put commas between each individual item. But since Spokane, Washington is city and state, I need a comma to separate those, to have good punctuation in my writing. I want to list more cities and countries too. So if I wanted to say Vancouver, BC, I would have to use a semicolon here to separate those ideas. Vancouver, BC, British Columbia in Canada. I would also like to travel to, let's say, San Pedro, Belize. So you notice, oh, and I almost forgot there. I need the semicolon. So this is a very confusing sentence in a lot of ways because there's a lot of punctuation there. And I'm happy to explain in more detail later on. But here is an example, Caesar, where I would use semicolons in a list because I have to separate city and state, or city and province, or city and country. So they can be useful for that. So great question, thank you. And it looks like we still have the chat going there. You're welcome, Beatrice. You're welcome. I'm happy to answer questions and keep them coming. This is great. This is a great classroom across the world, so thanks for being here again. Moving forward, here are examples of using that semicolon and the coordinating adverbs, or excuse me, conjunctive adverbs. Sophie called in sick yesterday. However, she still got her work done. However, she called in sick, however, she still got her work done. This shows opposition. It's a bit surprising and separate from calling in sick. Usually if you call in sick to work, you don't get your work done. Here Sophie did. She got her work done, and we use however to show that connection of information, but also to show opposition, contrast. So it's two things that are related but are different. Another example, employee motivation is a complicated job for many managers. Semicolon here. Consequently, many psychologists study this aspect of business. Now, consequently, we've probably heard the word consequences. It's a negative outcome. So if you do not pay your parking meter, the consequence is you might get a ticket. If you do not eat, the consequence is you might get hungry. So we use this to show a negative result, some sort of negative result. So this is the effect part. We have consequently, as a result, and therefore. Now, therefore and as a result are more similar than consequently, because as a result or therefore can be used to show both positive and negative outcomes. However, if I use the word consequently, it must be a negative outcome, and that's important to remember. It must be negative. If something good happened, I would not say consequently. For example, I would never say, I played the lottery, consequently, I won $1 million. It doesn't make sense in English because consequently is used for negative results. And it looks like we have another question here from Rosa. Thank you for your questions. Thank everybody for their questions. You want to know, do we use space before and after the adverb conjunctive? So the conjunctive adverb, we use a space before the conjunctive adverb after the semicolon. Anytime you use a punctuation mark, if it's a period, an exclamation mark, a semicolon, a comma, you will always put a space after that punctuation mark. If it is ending a clause, an independent or dependent clause, we will always add a space. So that's a very good question. If we go back to our examples here, I want to travel to Canada, semicolon, space. On the other hand, I might, and then comma again, space, I might travel to the United States. So yes, after semicolon we use a space, and after the comma we use a space. But this comma is right next to the letter D here. There's no space here. They're right next to each other, but always after. So thank you for that question, Rosa. That's a great question. And it's one that we have to practice quite a lot. So as you're looking at your writing, look for every punctuation mark and decide if it is correct, if there is a space afterwards. It's good practice. So moving forward here, we have more of our lesson. I'm going to go down to the third type of sentence. We're going to try to get through in the next 10 minutes or so the last two types of sentences. So we've talked about simple sentences, which are the same as independent clauses. We have talked about compound sentences and the three different ways that we create compound sentences. Now we're going to talk about complex sentences. So complex is not simple, it's difficult. The qualifier that makes a complex sentence complex is that we use dependent clauses in complex sentences. Now those two types of clauses, an independent clause, you can walk up to someone and it has meaning. You can walk up to someone and say, I play piano. And they know what you mean. A dependent clause cannot be on its own. It's dependent on an independent clause. It needs an independent clause. For example, if I walked up to someone and I said, although I am tired, and I walked away, I didn't say anything else. I just said, although I am tired, and I walk away, they might think I'm a crazy person because it doesn't give a complete thought. It doesn't give enough information. We need to connect it to an independent clause, something that can stand alone by itself. It's like an anchor for that dependent clause. Let's look at some examples of those. Winston enjoys marketing. Now that is an independent clause. That can stand alone. A dependent clause would be something like, because he gets to be creative. Now I could not walk up to you on the street and say, because he gets to be creative, and walk away. You would not know what I meant. There would be no meaning there. So I need to connect those two things. And when I do connect an independent clause and a dependent clause, it becomes a complex sentence. So the example here, we can combine in a couple different ways. Usually it does not matter which clause comes first, much like conditional sentences, which are also complex sentences and which we also have more lessons about. So tune in again to one of our classes here. This class is on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock. We will have more lessons on conditional sentences, which I also love to teach. So I could say either first. I can start with this right here, the blue, is the dependent clause, the one that cannot be by itself. I can say, because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. Because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. And because is showing this reason. But it is an independent clause on the end and a dependent clause in the beginning. We can switch those, however. We can switch them around. And we could begin with the independent clause, such as Sophie gets her work done. And we can add a dependent clause, even when she doesn't feel well. Even when she does not feel well. I could also do this with each example and simply switch them around. I could start, and let me show you here actually. I'll show you the comparison between the two. Here we have the dependent clause, which I will make not bold, and the independent clause, which I will make bold there. Because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. And the only reason that this letter here, I should note, is capitalized is because it is a proper noun. It's a name. I capitalize my name, Joshua. Caesar capitalizes his name. Rosa capitalizes her name. That's what we do with names. They're proper nouns. So this is not because of this comma here. If this were a regular noun, this letter here, the W, would be small. However, I can show you, we can switch these around and there's no problem. We can take this first dependent clause and start with that. We can start with Winston enjoys marketing. We'll use our comma here. Or excuse me. There we go. We do not need a comma there, actually. Winston enjoys marketing because he gets to be creative. And I put a period at the end of the sentence. When we begin with the independent clause in sentences like this, we do not need the comma. We just say, Winston enjoys marketing because he gets to be creative. It is only when we begin with the dependent clause, because he gets to be creative, right here, this is the dependent, because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. When I begin with that dependent clause, I do need this comma here. So it doesn't matter which order they go in. The only difference is if I begin with the dependent clause, I do use a comma. If I begin with the independent clause, the comma is not necessary. I do not need it. Let's see here. I am going to keep going through this lesson. Now, there are some common subordinating conjunctions that often begin a dependent clause. There are many, and we use some more than others. So we've tried to compile a list here that can help you recognize some of the more common subordinating conjunctions. Although, now, earlier in the chat, someone was asking about although. And I'm trying to, was that, Anita, did you ask about although? Someone asked about although, and I said we'd get to it. Well, we're there. We're getting to although. Although is common, and I could teach a whole lesson on the different meanings of these subordinating conjunctions. But basically, although, as, after, because, they hold different meanings and relationships to the dependent clause and the independent clause. When I use although, let's look at a couple sentences and I'll write them out and then I'll explain what the purpose of using although is. He never washes his hair, although it, well, let me see. He never washes his hair. I'm trying to come up with an example off the spot here, and I'm having a hard time. He never washes his hair, although he should. How about that? We're gonna give a little bit of advice. Although he should. So maybe this is my friend, and he has very dirty hair, and I say, you know, you should really take a shower, I think, Neil. And I use this to add information that is in contrast to the first independent clause. So he never washes his hair. I could say that by itself. I could put a period at the end of that sentence because it is independent. But I want to add information that's related to it. He never washes his hair, although he should. It adds extra information, and the information is usually in opposition to the first clause, the first independent clause there. We can use other words too, such as, after, because, before. Before and after are two of the most common words. We use them to show relationship of time. And an easy way to think about this is a routine in the morning. You could say, I brush my teeth after I wake up. I brush my teeth after I wake up. I brush my teeth is an independent clause. It can be alone. I brush my teeth. It's a good thing. Smiling teeth, right? I cannot say after I wake up by itself. So that is the dependent clause. That is the one that needs the first clause. And it shows order of time, after. It would not make sense to say, I wake up after I brush my teeth, because this means I'm sleeping and I'm brushing my teeth in my sleep. It wouldn't make sense. So when you use words like these, think about the relationship that the word creates and make sure that your clauses are in the correct order, because if I switched those, it would seem a bit strange. Let's see here, Caesar, you had a question here. Is it suitable to use a semicolon to list things? Oh, we talked about that. Sorry. Tara, your question is, can the conjunctions go anywhere in the sentence? That is a great question. The conjunctions have a specific place in the sentence. And I think that you're probably talking about these coordinating conjunctions or subordinating conjunctions that we were talking about here. Usually, they can go in any order, the clauses, and they introduce the dependent clause. We need to put it in that place to introduce the dependent clause. Now, the dependent clause could be first in the sentence. For example, because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. Or it can be at the end of a sentence, even when she doesn't feel well. The important thing to remember is these sentences in blue that we're looking at here are dependent. And these subordinating conjunctions introduce the dependent clause. We could not, for instance, say, because Winston enjoys marketing, because he gets to be creative. I mean, that would be using it twice. These words can go in other places in the sentence, but when we're talking about combining dependent and independent clauses, they introduce the dependent clauses. Let me see here. So good question, Tara. That's a great question. That brings us to the end of our lesson here for the third type of sentence. And I think we can probably go just a little bit longer, and I'll try to go over compound complex sentences, because really it's simply combining ideas 2 and 3 that we talked about, compound sentences and complex sentences. We can use all 3 together. So I could take something like, because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. This is a complex sentence. And I can take that sentence and I can add further information. I can simply put a semicolon and another independent clause, such as, because he gets to be creative, Winston enjoys marketing. He is very talented. Now, what I've done there is I have taken a complex sentence right here, and I've added a semicolon, which connects another independent clause. What I'm saying here is there are 3 clauses that are so related, I want to connect all of them. I want to connect all of this information together. So this is now a compound complex sentence. I'm combining those 2 ideas to use 3 clauses together that have important information. And this is very common in English. We use dependent clauses all the time to add meaning, like purpose or contrast or surprise or opposition. It's very, very common, and this is important to study and practice. So I look forward to practicing this more with everyone. And if you want more information, of course, you can always check out many of our other videos on our Smrt Live YouTube channel. And I'd like to thank everybody for all the wonderful comments. You guys asked very thoughtful questions, and I got to interact with you from all over the world. So Caesar, thank you. Beatrice, thank you. Rosa, Tara, everyone who asked these great questions. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. And as I said, we will be here every Tuesday and Thursday for this class. I'll be your teacher, Joshua. And That's at 1 o'clock. So English for academic purposes. It's a great class to study if you're a student or if you someday want to be a teacher. There are all the fundamentals you'll need to write amazing academic essays or maybe publish a novel, anything that you might want to do in English. This is a very valuable class. So again, thank you for tuning in. And we will be here again on Thursday, same time, 1 o'clock. So let me switch this here just so I can get out of the lesson there and say thank you in the bigger screen here, our amazing green screen in our studio here in Spokane, Washington at Spokane College of English Language. We have several classes that are going to be airing. We have this class, English for academic purposes. We also have an English for beginner to intermediate 115. That is on Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, Pacific Standard Time, 7:30 a.m. And then on Tuesday, Thursdays today, that's backwards. Today at 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have English 115. We have this class at 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And we also have another class coming up later today at 4 p.m. And that is English 125 for health sciences. So if you want to be a doctor or a nurse or work in the medical profession in any way, tune in. It's a great class. And then you can also tune in Mondays and Wednesdays for English 125. Which is a fantastic class. I taught it for many quarters, and there's so much good information there, very valuable. So be sure to tune in. Thank you again, and we will see you next class. Thank you so much.